Now we're going to talk about a movie that is near and dear to my heart. For those of you who didn't see the movie review video I posted recently about Spider-Man, what I'm doing is going back to the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy, reviewing each of those three films and videos in anticipation of the new Amazing Spider-Man reboot opening very, very shortly. And Spider-Man 2 is one of my very favorite films. Not just like superhero movies, but I just can't tell you how much I adore this movie. I love Spider-Man 2. And it was one of those movies that you felt like, because as a superhero fan, as a comic book fan, you know, you feel like you have to sort of make allowances for films, because for so many years, other than Superman and Superman 2, for a long time, there really wasn't a whole lot in terms of like quality films based on superheroes. So when the Spider-Man movies came around, the first Spider-Man movie exceeded all my expectations. Turned out to be a really good movie. And then Spider-Man 2 comes along, and finally, for the first time in a very long time, here's a movie that is a good movie. Not a good superhero movie. Not good for but good. A really good movie. Alfred Hitchcock said the formula for a great film is three great scenes and no bad ones, and Spider-Man 2 has that. And there are two scenes in particular that really exemplify that, and since I brought up that Hitchcock quote, I'll give you a third one too. But the two that really get to me, that come to mind immediately whenever I think of Spider-Man 2. First is the scene between Peter and Aunt May, the second big scene of theirs. They have a scene prior to this where Peter tells Aunt May that he was actually there with Uncle Ben when Uncle Ben was killed in the previous film, and that he wasn't at the library like Aunt May still believes he was. And Peter basically tells Aunt May that he is indirectly responsible for the death of Uncle Ben because he didn't stop the robber who ended up killing him when he could have. And after that scene, they're sort of estranged for a bit. They don't really talk to each other for an interval in the film. And then Peter comes back, and Aunt May is talking to him about Spider-Man and about how people like Spider-Man provide us normal people with examples of how to be noble, how to be self-sacrificing. And it's the "I believe there's a hero in all of us" speech that my wife always rolls her eyes at. Thinks it's totally cornball and just has no use for it at all. But I can't help it. I'm a total sucker for that speech and for that scene and for Rosemary Harris as Aunt May. I just love that speech so much. I find it just so beautiful and so moving. And then of course the second scene and the big scene, the one that is maybe the best single scene in any superhero film for me, is the train sequence in Spider-Man 2. And Spidey, first it's this awesome action sequence where they fight from the clock tower down to the elevated train. And they're fighting on top of the train. They're fighting on the side of the train. You see Spider-Man with his feet sticking to the side of the train, and they're punching each other. And Doc Ock holding on with his arms. So they're literally fighting standing upright on the side of the train. Just an amazing visual, a wonderful visual, the sort of thing you could only really see in a superhero film. Really, it takes advantage of the genre to show you things you can't see in other films that wouldn't make sense in another film. And then after the action scene, the train runs out of control. Doc Ock bails out, and Spidey has to stop the train. He's been unmasked at this point, so it's Tobey Maguire with the Spider-Man costume. They were always finding excuses to get him out of the mask, so you could see the actor's face. And he stops the train by shooting webs all over the place and sort of breaking it by holding onto the webs, and stops the train at the nick of time, and then passes out from the effort. And there's this beautiful shot, close up on his chest, where he's about to fall over. He's about to fall forward from exhaustion and fall off the front of the train. And you see hands reach out and keep him from falling off. And then he's carried into the car on the arms and the shoulders of people, and they lay him down on the floor, and he's unconscious. And there's a little bit of a Christ pose, which I suppose Raimi couldn't resist having him born back in the Christ pose, in the crucifix pose. And the people on the train look at him, and they see Spider-Man without the mask, and they see that he's a human being, that he's normal, and it's a perfect statement of everything that's great about Spider-Man, that everything that makes Spider-Man such a compelling character when he's done in a good way, which is that he's human, he's normal, he's like us, he's one of us, he's vulnerable like we are, and he's subject to the same foibles and shortcomings that we are. And there's the one character in the train who's looking down at him, who says, look at him, he's just a kid, he's no older than my son. And which is again a reminder of how young he is as a hero. He's not mature like Batman or Superman. He's not a fully grown adult, even though in the movies at this point he's in his second or third year of college, I think. But still, he's a young person. He's not. He's Spider-Man, but he's growing into a man. He's not quite made it there yet. And then he wakes up and he realizes he's been unmasked and he feels very exposed. And two kids have found his mask elsewhere on the train and give it to him. And he looks around at the people, all looking at him, all seeing his face. And it's a wonderful detail that nobody knows who he is. Like, he takes off his mask, and Peter Parker is nobody. It's not like the people on the train see him without his mask and go, oh, it's Peter Parker. They have no idea who he is. He's just an anonymous person from New York to them. But they see his very human face. And the kids give him back his mask, and they sort of can tell that he's a little nervous about being unmasked in front of all these people. And one of the kids says, don't worry, we won't tell nobody. And he looks around, and the other people on the train who have seen his face sort of nod in agreement, like there's been this pact sworn between them and Spider-Man that they won't tell anybody what he looks like, or they won't tell anybody who he is. And then Doc Ock comes back and knocks him out and takes him away, and the movie goes on. But that scene, that train scene, is such a beautiful thing. It's just an island unto itself. If everything else about the movie were terrible, and everything else about the movie is pretty great, but if everything else about the movie were terrible, it would still be worth seeing just for that train sequence. It's just phenomenal. And then the third scene, since I brought up the Hitchcock thing, the third great scene in the film to me is at the end when Peter is holding up the wall to keep it from collapsing on Mary Jane. And she has seen his face now, and she has realized that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And they've had their troubles throughout the film. First, when Peter thought he lost his spider powers, he tried to get back with Mary Jane, who was engaged to someone else. And then Mary Jane started to have second thoughts about the engagement and decided maybe she would like to be with Peter too. And then Peter decided that he wanted to be Spider-Man again and had to put Mary Jane off. And it was all very confusing for her and very frustrating. And he told her that he didn't love her, even though obviously he does. But he's to protect her and to protect his identity as Spider-Man, he told Mary Jane, "I don't love you." Very Goodwill Hunting. And then there's this scene at the end where the wall is about to fall on Mary Jane, and Peter runs in and holds it up. It's a quote. It's an echo of a great Spider-Man story in the comics, where possibly the greatest Spider-Man story ever told in the comics or anywhere else, where Spider-Man is trapped underneath a collapsed building, and he has to lift himself up and lift himself out. And the beautiful artwork by Steve Ditko, where he struggles and strains and gets a leg underneath of him and then pushes himself out. And there's there is a reference to that, an echo of that, an allusion to that, if you will, in Spider-Man 2, when he has to hold up this incredibly heavy wall to keep it from falling on Mary Jane. And he even says at one point, this is really heavy. And they have this lovely scene between them where he says, in case we die, I do really love you. And again, just the sort of thing, the emotional vulnerability and emotional intimacy between characters that you really didn't see in superhero films before that, and even to this day you rarely see that in a superhero film, where the hero and the love interest have that sort of emotional nakedness with each other, where he's feeling in a very vulnerable place, and he actually says, look, in case we die, I just want you to know that I love you. And it's a really, really well done. So those would be the three great Hitchcockian scenes. No bad scenes in Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 is one of the best superhero movies ever made. And I will argue with anyone to the death about that. I don't think it's the best. If you watch other videos on my channel, you know that I love Superman Returns, and I would rank Superman Returns ahead of Spider-Man 2. And there are a few other ones, too, that I would put up there ahead of Spidey 2. But Spidey 2 is, at the time, I would have said, when Spider-Man 2 first opened in the theaters and I first saw it, I said, without any qualification, that it was the best superhero film I'd ever seen. Better than Superman, better than Superman 2, which had been the yardstick for me at that time. And I thought I would never see a superhero film better than Superman or Superman 2. And Spider-Man 2, to me, eclipsed those, surpassed those. And it's still one of my very favorite films. I just watched it again just recently. And I love it every time I see it. It's just a great, great movie. And if the new Spider-Man movie coming out is a tenth of the movie that Spider-Man 2 is, I will be very, very happy indeed, but we'll have to wait and see about that.